They say performance has an expiration date, but what if they're wrong? No matter where you start, the goal's the same: to be better, stronger, wiser, bolder. We're here for the relentless, those that don't back down, don't compromise, and don't quit. This is training for Masters athletes by Masters athletes, with a community that holds you steady. So say goodbye to random workouts, because whether you're stepping into following a program for the first time or stepping onto the podium, your journey starts here.
All right, team. Welcome to the Boulder Athlete Podcast. I'm Josh, and I'm here with Joey Hoechsmann.
Yeah.
Joey, it's Friday for us. This will get published on a Thursday, but happy Friday. I really appreciate you making time on a Friday afternoon when you could be doing 1,000 other things. Thanks for being here and offering to share your story.
Well, it's my pleasure and my honor to spend some time with you. I've really enjoyed the interviews you've done so far, so I'm looking forward to chatting with you today.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I'm excited to unpack your story and have you share some stuff that I think is really going to be interesting for whoever is listening to this to hear. You had shared some things in advance, as all folks that join the podcast do, and I've highlighted some areas that I'd love to get into. But I first want to introduce you a little bit of what I know. We don't know each other. This is our first time meetings. But you have qualified for the 2025 CrossFit Games. This is your first trip to the games, as far as I am aware.
Yeah, correct.
Major congratulations. But you're also in the 45 to 49 division, competing alongside Jason, who some might
same
know
age
who
as
that
Jason
is.
Grubb.
Yeah, that's right. You're a gym owner, you're a business owner, you're a real estate agent, entrepreneur. I don't know how I would classify that, but you're in real estate as well. And yeah, and you just a ball of absolute muscle, man. And as I've seen some pictures of you, and as again, we don't know each other, we've never met, but I'm like, man alive, this guy is absolutely a brick house.
Yeah,
And
genetics.
as you dressed very nicely there, but you're also bulging out of your shirt. Part of the story we want to get to that you had alluded to and you touched on just moments ago is like this kind of transformational journey that you have been on. I don't think that you were always as fit as you are and held and carried the frame that you have today. And I'd love to go, maybe let's start there. Like,
Sure.
it's very related to your background. What was your background? And as you're coming up, like, were you involved in athletics? Were you not? Like, just walk me through wherever you want to start to present day.
Yeah, I mean, it's when I was younger, I loved skiing, so I skied every weekend here in Kimberley, and then we moved to Vancouver. So we were up in Canada here, and so I ended up starting ski racing when I was 13, 14 years old, and fell in love with that sport and actually took it to a pretty high level and was on the BC ski team and national development team, raced NORAM and Europa Cup until I was about 19, 20, and then took a pretty bad crash and injured myself, both my shins at the same time, and took me a year to get back from that. And I tried to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. I thought I wanted to be a physio because I spent so much time with physiotherapists when I was ski racing. And all in all, went back to business school and ended up coming back and taking over the family business. And so I went from, lots of athletics, doing all sorts of stuff, all sorts of cross training when I was ski racing, to coming back to the family business, which was great. Loved it. But trying to fill my dad's shoes, he was a very hard worker, still is a very hard worker. And so I worked a lot. So from in my 20s and 30s, that's all I basically did is work the business. Had young kids, two boys, and so tried to spend time with them too, but I just didn't focus on myself. And I knew something needed to change. Sort of mid 30s, I was getting a little fluffy, and then my late 30s, I was getting quite soft around the edges, is the nice way of putting it. And but more importantly, my health was deteriorating. Like I had really bad acid reflux. Had to, was taking medication for that. I actually ended up waking up in the middle of the night, and I thought I was having a heart attack at the age of 39. And so I drove myself to the hospital. Probably shouldn't have done that, but I did. And turns out they did all the tests. They said, you're having your blood pressure is through the roof, and you're having a panic attack is what they diagnosed it as. So there was my wake up call. I knew I needed to do something. They put me on high blood pressure medication. And so like I got to change. I was 39. So I turned 40 and a friend of mine was a member at a CrossFit gym, said, you should come check this out. So I went down to the gym and I did one workout and I said, this is not for me.
Yeah.
I need to get in shape before I do this.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to take some time and I'm going to get in shape. And then I had my 41st birthday and nothing had changed. And so I went back to the gym and I really had to just swallow my pride, my ego, because I couldn't do a pull up at that time. Like 5 burpees winded me, and it was a bit of a tough battle actually for 6 months. I felt like, yeah, is this even what I want to do? And then I know the shift, 6 months to a year. I'm like, actually, this is kind of fun and I'm seeing improvements and my body's changing and I was making changes, the CrossFit sort of lifestyle people are making little nudges, little tiny changes. First I eliminated sugar out of my coffee and then cream out of my, and stupid little stuff like that. So that's kind of where it started in my early 40s, and I'm 49 now. I've been at it for about 9 years, 8, 9 years.
The thing that jumps out to me in that story is well, one, in my family, we've got high blood pressure and a long history of quadruple bypasses and heart surgeries and heart attacks. And that's my dad and both of my grandfathers who have since passed. And my blood pressure is high and it always tests high. Now I'm as fit as I've ever been. And my resting heart rate is like in the mid to low 40s. But I go to the dentist when I just went last week, and they're like, "Holy cow, dude, what's up with your blood pressure?" I'm like, "I don't know." Every time I test it, so it's very much on my mind as well. And I have these fears of like, gosh, what am I going to get struck down with some just wild and crazy thing that's related to my heart just
Yeah.
because it's in my family. So I'm very aware of that. And so to hear that that was a big motivator for you doesn't shock me, right? It's a very serious thing. And then the incremental nature of your journey, like it's such an important takeaway. It's not like you transformed overnight.
No.
Like looking at you now, you're an intimidating presence. What was your shape and frame like when you started?
Yeah. It
When
was
you
about
were
200.
38, 39.
Yeah, so I was about 245, 250 pounds. Like I said, it's funny. I look at old pictures of me, and my head is fat. Like I held a lot of weight in my face as well. Pictures without a shirt. I was pretty bulbous. Had a beer belly. And, like I said, it was a lot of fat and not a lot of muscle. But yeah, I somewhere along the line, it changed. I went from just trying to be fit to being a competitive athlete, and it didn't happen overnight. But I'm so glad it did. Like going back to my late 30s, my wife would say I was actually kind of a bit of an angry human. Um, and not I didn't handle stress very well, and I would bring sort of my anger home and some of that kind of thing as well. So she's appreciative that I got healthy again. And I mean, actually, my identity, I went from this sort of athletic identity, and I'm sure people can relate to this. You lose that identity. I always wanted to get back there, but I couldn't find my way. I'd
Yeah.
go to the gym and I was still doing stuff, still skiing, still active, but couldn't find that part of me that I had lost in my early 20s. And
Hmm.
so when I circle back around to that later in life, I just like I truly feel like, okay, this is me. My identity as an athlete, and I own that now, and I'm appreciative that I found it again.
Yeah, that, which is a bit of advantage when that's your first identity, because you held that and carried that identity for some time and you still, regardless of what your body composition became, you still held this former identity. And so the motive to get back there is higher. The belief is higher because you've had it before, and that's who you see yourself to be. And so, not that it's an easy journey to recover that shape and frame, but you at least had the benefit of a former identity that was. It gets me thinking about, and I used to be a personal trainer and I dealt with a bunch of folks with metabolic disease and they're stepping in the gym for the first time. Their life is on the line and they have never lifted a weight. They've never broken a sweat intentionally. And it's like go time. And their identity, they don't have a former athletic background. And it is like They see themselves as the overweight person, and they don't have a belief that they can achieve anything different because their identity is so concrete in this person. That is such a hurdle to overcome. And I don't have that. I've never had that. And so I can't fully comprehend just how big of a challenge that is. All I know is it is a monster challenge. So sorry, that's a bit of a tangent, but it that concept of identity is something that I believe in wholeheartedly, and it can kind of work for you in some ways. I think it helped you probably to a certain degree to come back. And there's cases where it's a real anchor and it's hard to not even recreate, but to truly create a brand new identity for those that are just doing it for the first time.
Yeah, it's still I would, in my 30s, I would look in the mirror sometimes and be like, that's not the guy I know. Like,
Right.
you're a you're a little bit big. And then now actually sometimes it doesn't happen as much anymore, but I would say like my mid 40s when I had transformed my body again into a more fit guy, I would look in the mirror and I'd be like, oh, you're fit again. Wait, how did that happen? So I almost got this double identity
Yeah.
that had happened, but now I've been doing it long enough that I feel pretty good about what I do, and
Yeah,
how
Well,
healthy
you
I'm
qualified for the games. That's no accident.
yeah. Well, but and then that's cool, and I'm excited to talk about that. But I feel better now at the age of 49 than I ever have in my entire life. I've heard you talk about this too. I'm hitting PRs at 49, like
Mhm.
on heavy weights, because my technique is getting better. I never would have thought that would happen. My gymnastics, with the boulder programming has gone through the roof. I never would have thought that I'd be able to do some of the things I'm doing at 49. So
That's
that
so
part's
cool.
pretty cool.
Heck yeah. And it's such a, are you a father, husband? Do you have kids?
Yeah, two boys. Yeah.
Oh, right. So like it just carries greater meaning,
Yeah.
because you've now gone through what you've gone. You have these experiences to share. You can relate to them in ways that others can't, that haven't gone through what you've gone through, to set that example for them and to show them, look, little bits. It starts with taking the sugar out of your coffee. It starts with removing the cream, and then it's this little thing and that little thing. And next thing you do those things consistently over time, you can truly transform anything. You can recreate an identity. That's a very cool set of experiences to be able to pass along.
Yeah, to that point that you just said there, I feel, I'm sure you witnessed it before, where, it's like the crash diet. Okay, I'm going to change all of these things. I'm going to go from eating burgers and fries every day and pop to, starving myself of all those things in one day. And it's just a recipe for failure,
Oh,
because it's such a dramatic change. What I've noticed is over 9 years, I've made these somewhat intentionally and sometimes not. I've just made tiny little changes along the way. So now when you look at what I do in a day, it's like if you were to take what I did at the age of 41 and what I do now, the way I eat, the way I train, the way I sleep, the way I operate, even my business's leadership has transformed from my identity as being an athlete.
mm,
Uh, but all of those things happened over in small little incremental changes that I made. Okay, let's do this for 30 days and let's do this for 30 days. And they've all added up.
that's right. And that is the only way. That's too strong a statement. It's definitely the most successful way. It's the most successful way. And I have seen, and I've had clients that, as I said, came in like, wow, we are on death's doorstep if we don't make significant life changes. And so in some cases, it's like you don't have the luxury of making incremental changes. You have to make radical change right now, or we don't have much time. And that's scary, but boy, the motive is there, and you can use that motive for good.
Yeah.
But even then, and I'm thinking of couple people in particular, go through this journey of incredible weight loss, incredible transformation, 150 pounds gone. You look like a completely different person, but it happened too quickly. And the set of life experiences and circumstances that were surrounding you didn't evolve in parallel. You evolved so fast, and then you've inserted this new person back into the same experiences that surround you. And guess what? That is a recipe for disaster because you end up just then adopting all of the same things, and in a lot of cases, it's the spouse hasn't gotten on board with you. And so there's a bunch of behaviors that exist there that were always present that are just too appealing and they just pull you back in. And that's just, ice cream every day or whatever it is. You can outline a whole bunch of examples. the level of support or resentment that might exist in the relationship because one person's transforming and the other person isn't, and the dynamic of the marriage that is compromised. There are so many factors that contribute to a person being able to accomplish it, but then ultimately a person being able to like maintain and consistently, uphold those behaviors. That it's a tricky dynamic, and that's why very few people have that kind of success. But man, to hear that you have done it, you've clearly sustained it.
Yeah.
What's your family dynamic like? Talk to me about that,
Yeah.
because naturally they play a role in your success. They play a role in your ability to qualify for the games, to keep yourself transformed and looking as fit as you look and doing what you do. Talk to me about the role that they play.
Yeah, I'm so thankful. My wife, so back in that sort of 41, so the friend that said invited me to the gym, they invited my wife as well. My wife stuck with it. So she ended up being, kind of 6 months ahead of me, and I watched her transform. So that was maybe a bit of motivation too for me
Yeah, no doubt.
to get in there. So, yeah, all through this, my wife is, my biggest supporter and cheerleader. I'm so thankful for that. She's so understanding, as you can appreciate the amount that we're training even. And now, Jason has said it numerous times, you live a little bit of an imbalanced life when you're preparing for the games. My business, I'm not as focused on my business right now, and maybe not as focused on my boys and my wife, but I'm still carving out time for them. They're very important to me.
Yeah.
But so is this run for the game. So I am, I'm doing my morning sessions, and then I go to work, and I work 6 days a week. It's just kind of the way I've always done. So I still work a lot. And then I get home at around 5:30, and I go do my second session. So it's kind of a rinse repeat that I'm doing. And then I find these little moments where I can still spend time. My oldest is going to university. He's 21, and my youngest is 13, 15. And
I'll
how
edit
old
that
is he
out. Don't
again?
worry.
He's 15, and so yeah. So he doesn't want to spend a lot of time with me anyway. But
Yeah, right.
I love hanging out with him, and he's very active too. They're both in lacrosse, so I usually help out with some of their lacrosse stuff.
Do they are they in the I want to train for lacrosse, or is it like lacrosse is my training, I don't want to do anything else? Quit talking to me about coming to the gym, Dad. Like, what's that like?
They both train. My oldest son says CrossFit's for old people, and I take
Oh,
exception to that.
oh
And I'm
wow.
saying it's
Yeah.
right here, so you can call my son out.
Okay. Hey, buddy.
I know. And my youngest, I think if I would be honest, because he's seen me kind of transform, he comes and works out in our gym, but he doesn't like to work out with me. He likes to work out in his own time slot with his own music. So he is training for lacrosse. He likes to kind of do his own thing. I'll program a little bit for him, but yeah, he doesn't want to. I want him to come work out with me in the mornings, but he's not interested.
Yeah, I totally get that. And my kids are very different age, but and they're very different just in general. I have a daughter who's 12, going to be 13 here shortly, and I have a son who's 8, soon to be 9. And my little guy will come out to the gym sometimes with me, like, Dad, write me up a workout. I'll draft something up on the board, and he'll just do this circuit, and he just goes and goes and goes. And like, he's 8, and he did 50 pull-ups the other day, and I was like blown away. Yeah, as part of this circuit. I was like, okay. So he'll do it with me. We have to nudge my daughter to get into the gym. She's a very active soccer player, so she has certainly a right to take her rest days because she's incredibly active in soccer. But we're trying to, hey, maybe add a few bits here and there. But nobody can be in there. Got to be solo. She's gonna do her thing. It's gonna be on her own, like by herself. And so I respect that. She's got to have her anonymity in there, I suppose.
Yeah, your kid's a little bit different, right?
You had mentioned in your brief a couple of things. These are kind of like life lessons, and we've kind of danced on top of these and around these a little bit. But a couple of things that stood out. There's no substitute for hard work. I won't unpack the rest of what you share because I want you to do that. And then number 2, it's okay to struggle. And there's definitely something to both of those. I'd love to hear more on your perspective on why you shared that, what that means to you.
Yeah, it's I say it to my oldest son all the time because I think we're in a day and age where we are so lucky to have so much luxury around us. I don't know that any other way of putting it. We're blessed with air conditioning and power and so many different things. So we think that we shouldn't have to struggle on anything in our life. But as humans, actually, I find that it's through the struggles that we become better. So I think in my older years, I would say as I've developed as a CrossFit athlete too, I've realized that I actually try to put myself in struggle more often. And I do it in business, and I do it, in athletics, because I realize that that struggle is good. And if you can kind of get through to the other side, then the win on the other side, you feel so good about that. So I think everyone has a not everyone, people have a tendency to avoid the struggle and avoid hard work and try to go for the easy path and try to make life easier. And I just think that we're actually losing the essence of what life is about by taking that out of our life. So constantly talking to my oldest son about, just whatever you do, put in the effort, put in the hard work, because it will pay off. And I said, especially now, so many people are not willing to put in hard work. So even if you put on pretty hard work, you're going to, rise to the top in whatever you're doing. And imagine if you put in full 100% effort, where you'll get.
Yeah.
So I hope that I answered a little bit of that, but I find, we've all, as a CrossFit athlete, you feel this, right? We go to the gym to struggle.
No way around it.
And there's some workouts, like I'm a day ahead, so I did full send Saturday today. I always do my workouts a day in advance, and today's workout, I can tell you, was terrible. There was a lot of struggling going on.
All I know is there's like 100 burpees in the middle of
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, there's 100 burpees. Yeah, and that was the
Oh.
start of the workout. Then we did a whole bunch of other stuff after that. So anyway, it was a great session, and afterward I felt great. But in the middle of it, I'm questioning why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's the
Definitely.
fun.
I really love this concept, and so let's not move away from it yet. I also don't want to spend the next hour talking about it because I totally could. But even in the last podcast that I had done with David Borgstrand, he talked about some of his struggle with ADHD and mental wellness, how it's shaped him. It's ultimately created a superpower because he's lived a life having to consistently deal with adversity. You're saying this same thing, and I'll take the words you just shared, but like naturally as humans, we take the path of least resistance. That is how we are conditioned to find efficiencies in life, but so much is lost in doing so. It reminds me of, I'll probably get this wrong, but that cycle that is good times create weak people create bad times create strong people create good times. And there is some, whether you believe in that or not, there's certainly plenty of edge cases to it, but there is something to that for sure. And, I think of the childhood that I grew up in was not an easy one. But it shaped me to who I am, which I'm very proud of, in the way that I carry myself and the things that I'm passing on to my kids. And what I want to do is break that circle. I don't want to have the bad times that I went through and the good person that I think I am create weak people in my kids. And so I have to be incredibly intentional about how I insert thoughtful struggle and I insert adversity in their lives so they know and they are well practiced at overcoming that. And they don't get to live this streamlined life as blessed and as privileged as we are, and we all recognize. I've got to insert struggle there to make sure that they know how to deal.
Love that, Josh. Like I feel the exact same way, that you have to actually almost create the struggle a little bit for them and create a little bit of adversity in a very constructive way, to make sure, because again, my kids are very lucky, and they don't go without a lot of things. So, but we can make, again, we can make things challenging for them. I could tell lots of stories on that.
Yeah, I mean,
but they
insert
turned out to be pretty
CrossFit.
good kids. Yeah.
You're going to get humbled every day.
Yeah.
It's part of the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I hope people resonate with that. And I mean, you have this as well, as do we all, which is people in our lives that have a very different approach. And I'm not one to actually, internally, I do criticize, but I would never criticize a person's parenting style to their face. But you can see, hey, your style is to eliminate all friction from your kid's life. And while the intent is righteous, the outcome, I don't think you see what you're creating here. And I don't know if that's a great situation for your kid in the long term. Yeah, this is a big, heavy topic, and I probably am going to break myself in a jail by even touching on it. But man alive, the adversity needs to exist. I just feel so strongly about that. You don't want your kids to struggle all the time, naturally, but you need to understand the benefit that comes with that. And then how do you navigate that in a way that ultimately leads to a resilient human?
Yeah. Yeah. And and you can take that application, you can apply it. I have several businesses, and so I lead several teams, and it's trying to create a little bit of struggle with your teams as well when you're coaching and you're training and you're scrimmaging with them, and you're trying to get them to break out of their comfort zone and make it a little bit more difficult. Like what I'm telling you here is not easy, but it's going to create results. So you know
Mhm.
I've taken some of those elements and applied them into my teams as well with really good success. And I think they see me doing what I'm doing. I like to think that I lead by example, and so that when I'm taking that to the teams, it's not just me talking. It's hey, let's live through this together.
I work at Microsoft and I've been there for the last 10 years. And it was probably 5, 6 years ago, we started talking about this concept of inserting tension into the system, like
Yeah.
doing it on purpose. There was a time when we were rich with resources and we just had a whole lot of people. Now things have evolved quite a bit since then, but it was just, man, everything was great. And it conditions a style of work that doesn't necessarily push the envelope in a way that needs to be pushed if you're going to be competitive in a really competitive market. And so like we need to introduce tension into the system. We need to recondition the team. And that can be very difficult, especially when you're like, but we have it so good. We don't want this tension you're introducing. Like, no, thank you. We got a good thing going here, man. People are just like, forget about it. So to do that, whether it's in business, or to do that in your home, or to do that within a team of any kind, when you feel like we got it flush here, pal, that's a really difficult thing. And so then being like an excellent communicator and a storyteller and getting people to buy into the mission, and here's why you need to latch on to the why here to build on some Simon Sinek,
Yeah.
find your why rationale. That's an art. And so you clearly know this as a business owner. You've had to do this many times over, and you can't just write up a saying on the whiteboard and expect everybody to jump on the bandwagon. Like you gotta pitch it internally. So that's no doubt an art you've developed.
Yeah. Pitch it and live it and be there
Yeah.
right with them. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
And I say that some of this stuff has definitely come from all sorts of business coaching that I've had, but a lot of it's come from CrossFit. And lessons I've learned in CrossFit that I apply to business. It's kind of funny how they work together sometimes.
That's totally true. Here's an interesting question for you. I talked about this very briefly on a previous podcast. I want to get your perspective on your state of fitness. How do you feel like that impacts or influences your leadership capacity in the workplace?
Yeah. Several ways. The first way is just optics, which I didn't realize until I got fit again, that people look at you differently. They say, there's a fit guy. He must put in work. He's obviously cares about what he's doing. As you know, there's no mirrors in a CrossFit gym, so we don't do it for the looks. It's just kind of a byproduct. But people look at that and they say, he looks like he works hard, right? He must be a hard worker in fitness, so therefore he must be a hard worker in life. So it actually does translate a little bit there. So that's part of it. The other thing about it is, oh shoot, what was I going to say? It'll come back to me.
One of the things that's coming to mind, you might be going this way, so I'll just touch on it and you can pick
Yeah.
it up if it's the right thing, which is like your work ethic you touched on, like the level of humility that comes with CrossFit. I find that when I have a leader that is clearly a badass, for lack of a better term, in their field, but is so relatable and so humble in their approach, man, I want to follow that person, because I'm like, hey, I could be that, or I see myself in that person. Versus you contrast that with somebody that is just like a total a-hole, arrogance just coming off in waves. Now, they might be incredibly intelligent and great at their job, but when the arrogance is the thing that follows fast, and that's kind of the identity that you associate with them, you're like, oh my goodness, I can't take it from this person. I can't hear what they're saying because I'm so preoccupied with this thing that I'm feeling.
Mhm.
And when it's conveyed through tremendous humility, man, you're so open to whatever the message is. So as a leader, when you really approach that leadership role with humility, to say that word again, man, I find it opens your opportunity for influence so much more.
That really resonates with me. It's that word that you keep using, humility. My dad like must have beat that over the head when I was taking over the family business. And the other one I like to think of is quiet confidence. And that actually, so you're not openly arrogant, you just go about what you're doing in your workplace with that little bit of confidence and humility, so that you're not, you're willing to do whatever it takes. You're willing to actually do the job, or delegate the job or work with the team.
Mhm.
But I find that part of the athletics of the CrossFit gives you your own confidence. And I had felt that I had actually lost that a little bit,
Yeah.
um, and refound it again. So that was definitely, one of the other points that I wanted to bring up too. With the other thing I find is kind of interesting is that, everyone sees what I do, and they understand what I eat. A rep brings in a box of donuts, and, it's no thanks. I
Uh,
just don't need that. But, and not to say that I don't, partake I might have a quarter of a donut instead of six like I used to. Um, but that my team, that box of donuts might have been eaten up in about 5 seconds. And now I see that my team is actually a little bit more cognizant of what they're putting in their mouth as well.
Hmm.
And so inadvertently, I think I'm getting them to live a little bit more healthy life as well,
That's
just
right.
out of accident. But
Yeah,
we,
a little kind of health and fitness through osmosis just by being in
right.
your presence. That's a real thing.
The
Definitely a
business that
real
I'm
thing.
in, we're in retail furniture, mattresses, and appliances, and so mattresses are really important. So I'm constantly talking about sleep. I said we don't sell mattresses, we sell sleep. Let me give you some examples. Like I
Yeah.
know how important it is tied to our health. You know, I know that, how important the circadian rhythm of us going to bed at a similar time and getting up at a similar time and getting the right amount of sleep and making sure that the room is controlled. And so let's talk about that. Let's not talk about selling them a bed. Like, it's the sleep that's important. So let's make sure we deal with that.
Yeah, very
So
well
help me
said,
as a,
like a true professional.
yeah.
This ain't your first rodeo. I'm sold.
Yeah, right. But it's true, right? That's the thing.
That's
It's,
totally true. Sell the experience, not the object,
yeah.
Let's shift gears a little bit, but which, by the way, love that conversation we just had. So much good stuff in there that we could keep going on. I would love to continue to go on it. In fact, I want to shift gears a little bit to Boulder specifically. So, as part of your journey, where does Boulder come in? Where was that in your journey? How did you join? Talk to me a little bit about kind of how that came to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So, started CrossFit, somewhere along the line, someone convinced me to sign up for the open, which I did. And, we kind of go through that path. I'm like, that was pretty fun. And then I did it again. It was 2019. Yeah. 2019, I qualified for quarterfinals in my age group. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And so I'm like, oh, maybe I should, so what is this CrossFit Games thing that everyone's talking about? And, so you learn a little bit more. Um, I think it was in 2020. Oh, one, two. Yeah. I mean, stepping back a little bit, 2020, I did a squat clean, and I got both my wrists cut under the bar and my elbows hit my knees, and I ended up actually spraining
Yeah.
both my wrists, um, doing that. So that sort of set me back a little bit. Anyway, I went back, that's kind of a whole other story. But once I kind of realized that I was, interested in this competitive path, I thought, okay, well, how do I actually do this? So I actually did some Google research, and I'm like, oh, I found this Jason Grubb guy. He's in my age group, and oh, he's got this online coaching thing. So I reached out to him and said, what's this coaching thing all about? And I actually signed up for his coaching course back then, and so he taught me a ton about competing that I just was not getting from my local box. They were great coaches, great people, but just didn't understand that whole game side. And Jason just opened my eyes to this whole new world that I just didn't realize how much he was training, what he was eating, just all the things. So in 2023, I made a pretty good run. I started with him somewhere in there, and I made a pretty good run. And I was 15th or something like that after semifinals. But that was the year they took 10 athletes per age group,
Oh, yeah.
and had just missed the CrossFit Games. And but was still working with Jason. 2024, we did a massive facelift to business and a rebrand. And so I had some distractions happening along there. So I didn't do as well in 2024. It just simply wasn't training as much. But that sort of lit a fire. I ended up being 67th after semifinals. And I was like, I think I could have done better. I know what I need to do. I know what I was doing before. I think I can do better. And so I started talking with Jason a little bit more. And he's like, I've got this boulder programming, because he had convinced me to be on Mayhem before, because that's what he was doing. So it's kind of following that Mayhem track-ish. I was doing some gym stuff and then some Mayhem stuff, but I was all over the map. And so I'm like, okay, let's try this out. So I think I signed up in April of 2024, but I wasn't really. I do like a workout of boulder. So I was paying for Mayhem and paying for boulder at the same time, and just cherry picking little workouts out of everything.
Yeah.
And I realized something had to change. Like, this was not working. So right around that time, Josh, I was coaching in my gym, and I'm like, okay, if I'm going to commit to this, I need to not coach so I can take that coaching time and put it in. Even though I love coaching, I need to put it into this. And the owner of the gym said, well, that's great, but you can't use the gym outside of class time if you're not a coach. And
wait, hold on. Aren't you the owner of the gym?
No, this is the previous.
Oh.
I'm getting to that part of the story. So this was the local box that I was working out at. Okay. And there was no open gym time. He just didn't believe in open gym time. So, which is totally fine. It's, every owner runs their business a certain way. So, but I had to make a decision. I was like, oh my goodness, like, okay, I can't. The boulder training is going to take me 2 hours. I can't do it in my local box. I can't get the time here. Like, what am I going to do? So I actually started training out of my basement of my house for a little bit. I'm like, this is sort of working. I had a bunch of equipment up there through COVID. I'm like, it's not good enough. So in all of that, we bought a piece of commercial real estate, and there was this little chunk in the back, about 1,500 square feet. And I said to my wife, like, what do you think if I maybe kind of just move some of my stuff down here, and, I'll just kind of clean it up a little bit. And so I had her sold on that. And so that was, around August of last year. And then I got a little carried away and put in this really nice wood paneling in there, and ordered all my rig and barbells, and spent way too much money on basically outfitting with every piece of equipment that I possibly could.
And your plan was just for you at that time.
Just for me. It's just for me. And my wife and my kids.
Yeah, of course. And buddies, for sure.
So anyway, we had the ability to do that, and I realized that's what I want. I love it. I love doing this. I love CrossFit. I thought this is it's an investment, but it's an investment in my lifestyle, which I've grown accustomed to and I love. And so this is going to be an investment for the rest of my life. So I'm going to buy this gear.
Great way to look at it.
Right. So I worked out like that. We got that gym open in October, and if you worked out by yourself, it's totally fine, but it can get a little bit lonely. And so I had a buddy that I said, you want to just come work out with me a few mornings and keep me company? And so he came over and worked out with me, and that was awesome. And then I had another buddy that was interested, and so he started working out with me. And then I had another buddy, and there was a friend of a friend. And so now we've got 6 to 10 people that show up every morning at 6 o'clock and work out in my little gym. And somewhere along the line, as you know, this year in the games, they asked us to have an affiliate certify. So like, well, what are we going to do? Well, we better affiliate this thing. So then we had all the certifications so that we could go through and do all the things we needed for semifinals and all of that stuff. So Rusty Bear is the name of the gym. Been open since October of 2024. And it's really just, I'm not advertising. It's just a bunch of friends that are coming, and they're helping cover the cost of toilet paper and electricity.
But you could be found on the CrossFit affiliate map.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
And so at some point, if you haven't already, somebody's going to drop in and be like, how do I pay? How do I get a membership?
Hey, if you want to reach out to me, I would love to have any Boulder athletes are always welcome. Anyone watching this can.
All right.
I love it.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really cool story. Man, that's a dream situation. I just found 1,500 square feet. I'm gonna turn that into a sweet little gym, and then voila, we've affiliated ever since. That's really cool.
So it was good. And that, so in October, I started doing Jason's programming to the letter. So I was doing his morning sessions. And so I had qualified in July for the Legends competition. But really, October, November, and leading up to Legends, it's like, holy cow, like I am doing the work here, and I am seeing some ridiculous changes in my body and my strength and my gymnastics capacity. So, I didn't, Jason had said, you should come do this Legends, because it's sort of like, it's like a mini games trial type thing, a lot of athletes are there. And, so I was pretty happy to go and qualify, and didn't know what to expect, and met a bunch of cool people, and ended up doing pretty well at Legends.
Well, where
Um,
did you finish?
I ended up podium, and I was third.
Wow, congrats. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
which kind of shocked me and shocked a bunch of other people that were around me. But
And that's it. I mean, talk about a proof point of like, gosh, this is really working.
yeah, 100%. And I feel like even so, that was December of last year, and leading up to it's just like I keep feeling like I'm still improving. And even right now, again, the boulder programming has just made me into a totally different athlete. Particularly with my gymnastics, because I had weaknesses in handstand walking and capacity toes to bar and pull-ups and that kind of stuff. And the stuff we're doing, like I couldn't imagine doing, if I had to do 10 bar muscle ups before, I'd be like, okay, how am I going to break this up? Maybe 4, 3, 3,
Yeah.
like now we're doing, 15 bar muscle ups unbroken, because we gotta move on to the next thing that's these programs.
That's right.
That's pretty
That's
cool.
so right. Yeah, I definitely feel the same. Like I've been an athlete my whole life, so I'm athletic. That's probably my greatest strength is like my ability to coordinate movements together in a way that looks like I've done it before. So athleticism is like a big advantage. But I'm a 200 plus pound athlete. And so, as you know, like the body weight related things were usually the harder things. I could move barbells around pretty good, but really high volume gymnastics, I could do one big set because I was pretty coordinated. And so I could coordinate it well and like knock off a big one, but then my capacity would fall off really quick. And the ability to sustain that for large chunks of volume was tough. And actually, that's what CrossFit is. And so I was finding myself really struggling there. And man, gymnastics, holy cow, has been transformed as part of this programming. And it's shown up for me. I did Fittest to the Coast, and that was a good checkpoint of like, yeah, proof point, it's working. And, now I'm excited to go back to the games and give it a go, put all this stuff to the test.
Yeah, it's pretty. I
Okay.
mean, you've been before. This has sort of been, I would say, for 6 years, I've been thinking about, wouldn't it be cool to go to the CrossFit Games? In the last 3 years, I'm like, okay, I really want to go to the CrossFit Games. Um, so it's pretty cool to actually be going in August. And I think for me too, and I'm sure you can appreciate this. It's a really big deal, but the good news is that I'm really enjoying the training, and I'm enjoying the moment now. If I wasn't enjoying that, then it wouldn't matter. And same thing with Legends. When I went to Legends, I'm like, this is really cool. I'm looking around, kind of taking it all in. And I got to work at, like, I was in a lane beside Jason on several workouts. Like, I'm right beside my, a guy that I look up to and is a mentor
Yeah.
for me. And I even beat him in one of the events. It was
Oh,
crazy.
that's
So
so awesome.
it was the best.
You'll remember that forever.
Yeah. Yeah. So pretty cool memories.
Yeah, that is really cool. Talk to me then about your semifinals experience, where you finished, and then like that, realization that you've qualified for the games, and now you're checking this box, kind of a bucket list item you've been working years and years to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was, God, I can't even remember where my notes are, 11th or 13th or something like that, qualified after semifinals. And it's, this whole Rusty Bear community that we've created. They all helped out to get me there, all my buddies. So, when I got the
Did they
news.
get a bunch of level ones then to?
Yeah, a bunch of them already had
Wow.
level ones, and
Okay.
they're all pretty good athletes. But definitely one of them did a recert. They all did all of their judges courses and stuff like that, so they could help out. And my wife had to recert her level one because hers had expired, so she did her online level one because we couldn't get anyway. It was a whole thing.
It was a whole thing. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
really cool. You got a community that dedicated to, well, CrossFit, but then you ultimately to help support you through the process.
yeah, I really felt like they were a part of my success. Helping with the training, helping with the event, and so So it's pretty cool. Actually, a bunch of them. We got 3 or 4 of them are coming down to Columbus, Ohio to cheer me on and come watch the event. And we rented a house down there, so we're all staying in the
Wow.
house, and it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be a great experience.
It is gonna be awesome. I mean, I keep teasing this, but like the Jason and myself and Adam and Aaron, we've got some really cool stuff planned. And that's an understatement. It's gonna be such a fun experience. You just think about you as a competitor going, that's gonna be an experience of itself, and you'll walk away with incredible memories. But in addition to just that competitive element, there is gonna be a real community feel and some like I don't even know how to describe or how I would categorize these things. Just memorable moments, memorable experiences that my hope is athletes walk away and go, you know what, that was really thoughtful. That took some real effort to execute, and they feel that, and I'm grateful that that is where our heart is as a company, Boulder, and where we're making our investments is to really make the athletes feel that way. And we could flop, but I don't think we will. I think we're going to do it in a really cool way. And so I hope that comes to life, and you're absolutely going to be part of that experience with us.
I would say that when I went to Legends, I was very nervous because I was just traveling down there from Cranbrook, Canada, down to Phoenix, kind of by myself with my wife. And thankfully, I had her as a support. But the minute I got there, and I kind of was looking around, and all of a sudden, oh, there's a big Boulder flag down there. Maybe I'll go down and just see who's there and see if I've been communicating with Jason forever, but I'd never met him.
Yeah.
And it was just, everyone was so welcoming, and they're introducing me, and and they've got granola bars and all sorts of stuff there laid out, and they had those Normatec compression pants there. Anyway, through the weekend, we just go over to the Boulder camp, and I met a whole bunch of cool people, and we just had great conversations, and everyone was so genuine and nice. And so I mean, I think just welcoming and nice. I mean, if you did nothing else, I sure felt like, oh no, this is my tribe. Like, these are my humans over here. They're really good people. So I look
Awesome.
forward to meeting more people again when I come down to.
Heck yeah. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. And, I've had the privilege of being able to do this podcast. And so I get to talk to so many Boulder athletes, hear their stories. We're on this stretch right now of, games qualifiers because I want them to feel seen and appreciated. And it's an awesome, like, little season leading up to the games in their fitness career. And man, I feel like I'm making friends left and right. I can't wait to go see in person at the games and share this really cool experience. And it's gonna be pretty memorable.
Yeah, for sure. I've really enjoyed getting to know you as well. I can't wait to shake your hand in person.
Heck yeah. Well, you'll get a bear hug from me.
Yeah,
From
nice.
the old Rusty Bear. The Rusty Bear hug.
Yeah, like I said, I've really enjoyed this. I think the couple things that I noticed through as an athlete is mindset. We talked a little bit about that with the struggle and the hard work. But what I've really come to realize is that what we put in our brain is what we're going to sort of get out in our results. So, we all have that sort of internal gremlin in us that can be a little bit negative, or, you're not worthy, and you're not capable, and just sort of kind of squashing that gremlin a little bit. I think I've learned to at least drown that side out, and just remind myself that enjoy it, enjoy the moment, enjoy the ride, do your best, work your butt off, but always have that positive mindset that I'm going to do well. So come in with that quiet confidence and humility, and then just leave it all on the floor, and that's the best that you can do. But I'm visualizing doing well. And I think that is so important. As athletes, we can put in the effort in the gym, but if we don't put in the effort in our mindset, and like, I'm a big believer in putting out into the world what you want, and I've seen it happen in my life in business and in CrossFit. Okay, I'm going there, right? So I have a goal in mind, and I'm visualizing that goal, and a lot of times it comes to fruition, and it may not happen this year. Might happen next year, might happen
That's
in
right.
the future, but let's just keep putting it out there and make sure our mindset is good. So I just kind of wanted to leave with that. And then the last thing is that, what I've seen in my CrossFit journey is, wherever you're at, is to just sort of start doing that one little thing to make a small difference. And, put your shoes on in the morning and show up at the gym, and, maybe do a few extra reps, and just do those little things, and incrementally over time, it'll make a big difference.
Very well said. Wise words indeed. And you've lived it. Those are more than words on a whiteboard, right? That's been a lifestyle for you over the last several years. And yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure. Hope it helps. That mindset's helped me and served me well. So maybe it'll help a few other people.
Well, thank you again. I really appreciate you making time for this, Joey. And I think this is going to strike a chord with a lot of folks.
Yeah, I hope so. And thanks again for your time. And again, it was a real pleasure to hang out with you and chat. We'll see you at the games.
Copy that. Can't wait. Team, thanks for checking out the Boulder Athlete Podcast. We are so grateful that you did. Wherever you're watching or listening, please like and subscribe so we can keep bringing you more stories from this great community.